Hey everyone. So there was one thing we didn't get to yesterday, and I wanted to introduce it, both because it'll be useful for this workshop and it'll be really useful for everything in the future. Do you have access to the workshop? Is that, no?
From GitHub.
From GitHub you do. Okay, cool. And I will open it on LearnDot. Sorry, I forgot about that. So the feature I wanted to talk about is async await. It is another way of resolving promises, which basically amounts to much the same thing as this, but it looks a lot nicer, and there are certain data flows for which it's definitely better. So the way we use it, I'm just going to turn this into a function that uses async await. You have to say that the function is async by putting the async keyword in front of it. Ooh. And doing this lets you, it does two things. It lets you use await within this function, and it guarantees that this function will return a promise. So even if I just say return 2 in here, this function is going to return the promise of the number 2 rather than the number 2. So we can see that in the console. If I write a function or an async function that returns the number 2, and I call it, I get a promise back. And the reason for that is because everything, well, not everything this function does is going to be asynchronous, but this function is assumed to be doing asynchronous things, and so you don't have to specify the fact that it's using promises. Doing this is enough. Okay, so that's nice, but how do I then get rid of my thens and instead have something that's a little bit more like the imperative control flow we're used to? And the way is, I can say, here, read file is now going to return, well, it returns the promise of a buffer, and anywhere in an async function I can await a promise and get the output as just an actual value. So now if I log the buffer, I will see that I actually have the actual buffer. Oops, no promises. So here's the buffer. And then I can work with it as you might expect. So I can be like upcase equals buff.toString .toUpper, and then just return upcase. Oh, actually, I guess we also wrote it, right? So write file output stir. And I guess I want to wait for that to finish. So you don't have to capture the return value. You can just await something, and then return upcased. Oops, stir is not defined. What did I do? Upcased. There we go. And I guess I should see that I've got this promises.js.upcase. Okay. Questions about that?
So the functions all inside that upcase file will be synchronous, right? Because we're putting wait.
Well, so it actually transforms this code more or less into the code we had before. It's still wiring things up asynchronously, but syntactically it looks synchronous, which is the win. The really nice thing about this, I think, will be more, it'll show up more when we use sequelize, but if you need to call a function, like, what's an example of a function that does this that's not something we haven't seen? Yeah, let's say I had the name of a file to read, and I'm going to say echo users ashi.bash profile. So I'm going to put this path into file to read. And then I want to read that file. So read file indirectly. So read, I'm going to call this a read fake link. It's kind of a fake link between this file to read and the target file. Link file. Promisify in here, and then promisify fs.read file. Okay, so if I did this with promises, I would have to read this file and then then, I guess I would have to do like read link file, then link link.toString, then read that, then, is that all I need to do? That's probably all I need to do. Read fake link, file to read. Okay, and why is that users ashi.bash profile? Oh, because there's a new line. .trim. Okay, so this works, but if I'm doing it with async await, I can actually use await on the right-hand side of an expression, so I can actually just say return read await read link file. So this says read the content of this link, wait for that, and then read the content of that. And I think it's going to be await read file. There's a little bit more here. .toString .trim. So being able to use this lets us use promises sort of as expression values or as right-hand side values, so we can just stick them into arrays, we can just like put them into objects, and in the scope of the asynchronous function, they will have already been resolved, which is going to be kind of useful in this workshop and then super useful with SQLize this afternoon. Okay. Any questions? Mm-hmm.
Okay, so with the async keyword, does it fundamentally change the way, because read is already a promise, right? It's already used for this file.
Yeah.
So what is async fundamentally changing the way we run at all?
No, it's still asynchronous.
Okay.
It just lets us use await to syntactically change how we access promises. And so instead of saying .then, we can still .then actually. I could be like path, like target path is await read link file. Is read link file then buff toString trim. And then say await target path. So I can sort of mix and match these syntaxes however I like. It just gives me access to this new syntax where I can await a promise and call and send it into a function which is expecting not a promise without calling .then.
Okay. So you're just kind of hitting promise when you use await then depending on the
Yeah, exactly. It lets us do something that JavaScript functions could not do before, which is pause themselves. We do it explicitly. JavaScript functions still won't ever be preempted. It's not the case that between this toString and this trim, this function might stop and something else might start. But here, because it says await, I know that, oh, okay, at that point, my function is going to pause, things might change. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Async await is built on promises. So you always await a promise. And async functions always return promises. That's a That's all. The other thing it does is that errors, you can still catch them like this. I can still say .catch on something and get the error out. But I can also do a try catch. And this is not an async await feature precisely. Like try catch is like built into the language. Something went wrong. So now, if I, let's see. Yeah, so now if I break that link, what did I call this? File to read. Okay, so now that is not an actual file, so this, yeah, so this read should fail, and that's going to trigger this catch block. Isn't it though? No? Wait, what if I said read, if I give it a bad path here? Okay, that's interesting actually. I just learned something. The thing I learned is that an error that occurs in this function does not trigger the catch, but an error that occurs in the await does trigger this catch. Good to know, good to know. And so the distinction here is that when I'm returning this read await target path, I'm returning this promise, and when I return, the promise has not resolved. I'm not saying return await read await target path, which I think would cause my program to pause here and catch any errors at this point. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So I'm actually, all of this is built up to actually me saying, probably my preference is to not use try catches around promises, and if you want to catch errors, to just catch them the old-fashioned way. And usually you want to catch them somewhere like way high up, like here. Usually. All right. Any other questions? Okay. I'm going to pop up in the workshop. It's a bunch of exercises on promises, so you'll get a lot of practice with them.